PTSD. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. This condition often occurs in people who have experienced extremely traumatic events, such as serious accidents, abuse, or war. They suffer such deep psychological wounds that even hearing, seeing, or smelling something related to that traumatic event can make them panic, or even pass out. A typical example is war veterans. When they return home, even though there's no more gunfire or bombs, fireworks or loud noises can still cause them to panic because their brains have stored the fear from the battlefield. PTSD symptoms are usually grouped into 4 categories. Intrusion. Painful memories repeatedly come back. Avoidance. Avoiding places, people, or objects that remind them of the trauma. Negative changes in thinking and mood. Negative emotions, depression, loss of interest. Hyperarousal. Easily startled, irritable, or, conversely, emotionally numb. Bipolar disorder. As the name suggests, people with bipolar disorder experience extremely rapid mood swings. They can be cheerful one moment, and suddenly fall into deep sadness, only to flip into intense excitement again. And the scary part is, they can't control it. Sounds a bit like people in love, right? But unlike them, no bubble tea can fix this. The cause might be genetic or due to an imbalance in the brain's biochemistry. Specifically, the neurotransmitters are not functioning properly. Currently, about 40 million people worldwide suffer from bipolar disorder. Though it's not contagious, once diagnosed, it's rarely fully cured. Long-term treatment is required, usually involving medication and psychotherapy. Schizophrenia. As a kid, maybe you imagined the floor was lava or had an imaginary friend only you could see, and as you grew up, you realized it was all just child's play. But for people with schizophrenia, what they imagine feels real. They often experience delusions and hallucinations such as grandiose delusions, thinking they have superpowers, like saving the world or winning over their crush. Paranoid delusions, constantly thinking someone is trying to harm them. Delusions of control, believing a supernatural force is controlling their thoughts or actions. Causes may include genetics, a stressful or abusive environment, or a lack of love and support. The disorder affects about 1 in every 300 people, and if someone in the family already has it, the risk increases 12-fold. While schizophrenia cannot be completely cured, with early and proper treatment, including medication and therapy, patients can live stable lives like anyone else. Depression. This is a condition that can be considered a hot trend among Gen Z. Out of 10 people on Facebook, you'll probably find 10 claiming they're depressed. For normal people, Monday is just the start of the week. But for someone with depression, Monday is the worst day ever. In fact, everyone hates Mondays, but for a depressed person, every day feels like Monday. They feel extremely hopeless, lose interest in everything, are tired, can't concentrate, and sometimes experience random anxiety that leads to sleep disorders. There may even be unwanted behaviors. These people almost have no energy, don't want to do anything, and just want to sleep all day. Sounds a bit like me. Sometimes, even when they want to sleep, they can't. If they're hungry, they just grab whatever to eat, or sometimes, they don't eat anything the whole day. Globally, around 280 million people are suffering from depression. The scary part about this condition is that many people don't even realize they're depressed. They still smile and talk normally when meeting others, which leads to a lack of prevention and timely treatment. Anxiety disorder. Feeling anxious is a completely normal emotion. It's a form of fear. Back in the day, humans had to survive wild animals and other threats. Every time they stepped out of their cave, there was a high chance they wouldn't make it back alive. So, they had to imagine the worst-case scenarios in advance in order to prepare and avoid danger. Charging in blindly would have been pretty foolish. That's where anxiety comes from. However, unlike regular people, those with anxiety disorders tend to worry excessively and are constantly stuck in a state of uncontrollable fear. It's like their brain is on overdrive. Even something as small as a falling leaf can make them panic. Now, anxiety itself isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it helps us mentally prepare for upcoming events. But when it becomes too much, it only holds us back, making us afraid to do anything at all. People with anxiety disorders are often trapped in endless worries about things that haven't happened yet and might never even happen. They keep replaying past mistakes in fear that they'll happen again. There are many types of anxiety disorders, but 4 are most commonly seen. Generalized anxiety disorder. People with this feel anxious about almost everything. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. They experience unwanted thoughts and feel the need to repeat certain actions. Panic disorder. Sudden panic attacks that hit without warning, causing intense physical reactions. Social anxiety disorder. Like those people in Japan who stay home all day and avoid talking to others. Globally, around 300 million people suffer from anxiety disorders. The good news? It's a treatable condition. Eating disorders. This isn't the kind of illness caused by digestive problems that make you unable to eat. It's more like your brain convinces you that your body has a problem, almost like it holds a grudge against food. For people with this disorder, food is like an X, you don't even want to touch it. A typical example is someone who constantly thinks they need to lose weight, even when they're as skinny as a skeleton, so they follow extremely strict diets. But not everyone with this condition completely stops eating. Some cases involve binge eating, like every time they open their mouth, someone in Africa dies of starvation. But afterward, they feel overwhelming guilt, to the point they try to purge everything they just ate through extreme methods, like inducing vomiting or taking large amounts of laxatives to flush it all out. In other cases, people may only crave things that aren't even food. If left untreated, eating disorders can lead to problems in the digestive system, blood pressure issues, hormonal imbalances, esophageal damage, and more. I couldn't find one specific cause for this disorder, but it's mostly linked to psychological issues. That's why the most effective treatment is usually cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps patients adjust their thoughts and behaviors. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD for short, is exactly what the name suggests. People with this condition are often overly energetic, impulsive, and seemingly unable to focus on just one thing. But the truth is, they're not unfocused. They're focusing on everything at once. Everything they see, hear, and even imagine in their heads grabs their attention. Their focus gets split into too many pieces, making it almost impossible to concentrate on a single task. This happens 24/7. Even when they close their eyes to sleep, their ears are still picking up sounds, their minds start playing movies or broadcasting music, all on their own. As a result, people with ADHD struggle to pay attention or remember things because their brains are constantly processing an overload of unnecessary information. It's like a computer with way too many background programs running, and you just can't shut them off. However, ADHD isn't all bad. In fact, it can come with a sort of superpower called hyperfocus, a state of extreme concentration so deep it feels like disconnecting from the real world. To be fair, hyperfocus isn't unique to people with ADHD, but it tends to happen more frequently in those who do have it. ADHD isn't just a childhood condition either. Adults can have it too, and in some cases, it's even more prevalent among adults. Estimates suggest that 129 million people aged 5 to 19 have ADHD, while over 366 million adults are also affected. And with the rise of platforms like TikTok and the general decline in human attention spans, I believe the number of people with ADHD will only continue to grow in the future. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. People with this condition are constantly compelled to live extremely clean lives and arrange everything neatly and according to specific rules. Sounds just like my mom, except you can argue with your mom, but someone with OCD doesn't even know who to argue with. This disorder doesn't just come from being obsessed with online perfection. It's also about being fixated on repetitive actions. For example, they might feel like they must leave the house at exactly 8 a.m., even on weekends, even if there's absolutely nothing to do. OCD is a type of anxiety disorder, so the person often feels excessive worry. Their obsessive behaviors are actually coping mechanisms to try to reduce that anxiety. For example, someone might be obsessed with germs or worried that they could get sick, so to ease their fear, they might shower multiple times a day or constantly wash their hands and disinfect everything around them. Worldwide, around 79 million people suffer from OCD, and it can be treated with various forms of psychotherapy. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, commonly known as autism, is a condition caused by differences in the brain compared to typical individuals. People with autism aren't necessarily those who sit at home all day without talking to anyone. The core issue is that they don't understand what others are saying or implying. For example, when someone tells a joke that everyone else finds funny, someone with autism likely won't laugh, not because they don't want to, but because they don't understand the joke. In a way, it's like people with autism are running a different operating system from everyone else. This affects their ability to communicate and interact socially. The way they perceive the world is also different, making it difficult for them to read emotions, understand body language, or follow social norms. People with ASD are often seen as the opposite of those with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. While those with ADHD tend to focus on too many things at once, individuals with autism often fixate on one specific thing. Interestingly, what they focus on is usually tiny details that others don't even notice. This gives them an extraordinary ability to concentrate, observe, and remember, especially when it comes to small details. Many also show exceptional creativity and focus in these areas. Despite these unique traits, autism is relatively rare, affecting only about 1% of the global population. Sleep disorders. According to the Global Sleep Association, an association that seems to exist just for sleeping, affect 45% of the world's population. I don't know where they got that number from. Maybe Santa Claus went house to house checking who was asleep. Sleep disorders aren't the same as just losing sleep once in a while. They're divided into two main types. 1. Insomnia. This is when no matter how hard you try, you just can't fall asleep, even while listening to the chill sounds of dogs barking. People with this kind of insomnia often stay awake until they're completely exhausted, and only then might they get some sleep. In other words, they want to sleep, but simply can't. 2. Narcolepsy. The opposite of insomnia. Narcolepsy is when a person is constantly sleepy, even while driving, hanging out, or in any situation. They might just doze off on the spot. Honestly, sounds a lot like me back in school. 3. Sleep apnea. As the name suggests, this is a condition where a person temporarily stops breathing while sleeping, with each pause lasting around 10 seconds, repeating multiple times throughout the night. If left untreated, the mild consequence is snoring like a bulldozer, which causes sleep problems for others too. The severe consequence? It can lead to death. People with sleep disorders might also talk in their sleep, sleepwalk, or even eat while sleeping. I honestly wish I had a disorder that lets me work while sleeping. That'd be amazing. Paranoia. Humans are a weak and untrustworthy species, so it's normal for someone to feel fear or suspicion toward others when there's a valid reason. However, for people with paranoia, this mindset is amplified 1,000 times. For example, if they see their coworkers whispering about something they don't know, a normal person would ignore it. But someone with paranoia would think they're being talked about behind their back, that others are plotting to get them fired, or even planning to assassinate them. It's like their brain turns into a gossiping neighbor, drawing wild conclusions from nothing. This causes the person to constantly live in fear of others, always believing people have malicious intentions toward them. As a result, they become distrustful, overly sensitive, and aggressive. The causes of paranoia may include genetics, psychological trauma, or stress. Dyslexia. People with dyslexia simply have difficulty processing information related to language in general, which leads to challenges in reading, writing, and processing sounds. This condition has nothing to do with intelligence. Its causes may be genetic and are primarily related to dysfunctions in the cerebral cortex. Treatment often involves educational interventions and specialized support. And that wraps up all the symptoms and psychological disorders I've researched. If you know of any others, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.